You know how they say life can change in the blink of an eye? Well, for me, it changed in the splash of a bath. Not glamorous, I know. But then again, I'm not glamorous. I'm just Maya López, a 29-year-old hotel housekeeper with flat sneakers, permanent under-eye bags, and a dream I keep folded away like a sweater I can't afford to wear. The day it all began, my feet were barking like two old dogs. I'd worked 3 doubles in a row at the Sterling Grand Hotel downtown, the kind of place where pillows cost more than my rent. My manager, Karen, yes, a Karen, had yelled at me that morning for missing a smudge on a mirror. I almost cried, but I didn't. Because crying doesn't get your sister through med school. Anyway, it was Suite 1801 that did me in. The presidential suite. Cream marble floors, gold fixtures, more light switches than I could count. I'd cleaned it from top to bottom, changed sheets with military precision, fluffed towels like clouds. But when I saw the giant soaking tub, I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the soft light, or the jasmine-scented bath salts I wasn't supposed to touch. I told myself I'd just sit for a second. Next thing I knew, I was waking up with my cheek stuck to a bath pillow, my heart doing jump rope. Someone was in the room. Footsteps. A man's voice. Deep. Confused. Why is there a woman sleeping in my bathtub? I bolted upright, soap bubbles in my hair, looking like a busted Cinderella. There he was. Matteo Sterling. Yes, that's Sterling, CEO of Sterling Grand, hotel mogul, tech investor, rumored to date international models who can quote Plato. The guy looked like he belonged on a GQ cover, but in that moment he was just a guy in a perfectly tailored suit, blinking at me with raised eyebrows and a half smile. I opened my mouth to explain and what came out was, "I'm so sorry. I sat down for 5 minutes." He laughed. Laughed. I thought I was fired. Arrested. Both. But he just walked to the sink, poured himself a glass of water and said, "You know, I've walked in on worse. What's your name?" "I'm Maya," I said, still gripping the towel like a shield. "Well, Maya," he said, eyes crinkling. "You've got nerve. I like that." And then, like something out of a weird rom-com written by a tired single woman with 3 cats, he offered me a job. As what? I stammered, still shell-shocked. "My assistant," he said, sipping. "I've got a few too many boring people around me." "You're interesting." I thought he was joking. Rich people sometimes are like, "Oh, look at the peasant, how charming." But he wasn't. He sent me home in a car service and told me to meet him in his office Monday morning. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling of my shared apartment, wondering what the heck just happened. And that was how it started. Monday morning came like a slap to the face. I wore my best, least wrinkled, blouse and black pants I had to safety pin at the waist. My sister, Danny, practically squealed when I told her what had happened over the weekend. "You fell asleep in a billionaire's bathtub and got promoted? Maya, are you the main character now?" I wasn't sure what I was. Nervous, mostly. I got to Sterling headquarters 30 minutes early, sweating under my thrifted blazer. The building was glass and chrome and ambition, all sharp edges and polished shoes. And then there was me, clutching a half-dead tote bag that smelled like fabric softener and fear. I checked in at the front desk. The receptionist looked me up and down, like I'd taken a wrong turn on my way to the mailroom. "Mr. Sterling is expecting you," she said, deadpan. "Top floor. Executive wing." My ears popped in the elevator. I was sure I'd be stopped, that this was all a prank and Ashton Kutcher would pop out yelling, "Gotcha." But when the doors slid open, there he was. Matteo Sterling. Black suit. Black coffee. Casual power. "Right on time," he said, smiling like we were old friends. I was about to answer when I tripped on the lip of the rug. Not a big trip. More of a stumble. But enough to send my tote bag flying. And with it, the travel mug I'd foolishly brought along full of gas station hazelnut coffee. It soared. It splashed. Right across the pristine white wall. A Jackson Pollock of shame. I am so sorry." I gasped, frozen. "I swear I wasn't, I didn't think." Matteo blinked at the wall. Then at me. And then again he laughed. "You really are something, Maya." He waved a hand, called in his assistant, an elegant woman named Petra who looked like she ate stress for breakfast. "Petra, cancel my 10 a.m. and get facilities up here. And get Maya a visitor badge. No, scratch that, employee credentials." "Sir." Petra blinked, like her entire corporate worldview just cracked. "She's officially hired. Let's show her the ropes." And just like that I had a desk. A nameplate. an ID badge with a photo that looked like I'd been caught mid-sneeze. I was now executive assistant to the CEO. My job? Calendars. Emails. Running interference when Matteo wanted to avoid certain people. Like the HR lady who always pitched team-building retreats, or the board member who smelled like expired aftershave and colonialism. But mostly I was just there. Beside him. Observing. Listening. And something strange started happening. He'd ask my opinion. On real things. Business things. Like, Maya, do you think this ad campaign feels too snobby, or would regular people actually want to use this app? I'd give him my honest answers, even when they weren't flattering. One time I told him his new marketing video made the hotel seem like a Bond villain's lair. He didn't fire me. He rewrote the campaign. And suddenly people around the office started noticing me. Not as the bathtub girl, though that nickname did make the rounds, but as someone Matteo trusted. Respected. Of course, not everyone was thrilled. Petra, for one, gave me tight smiles and colder coffee every day. And the other assistants, the ones with designer bags and long manicured nails, they started whispering whenever I passed. But I didn't care. I was doing something I actually liked. I was good at it. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. And then one night, at a business gala at the Drake Hotel, something happened. Something that changed everything. You know when you walk into a room and immediately realize you don't belong? That was me at the Drake Hotel Gala. The theme was elevating the future. Very highbrow. Very high heels. I borrowed a dress from my neighbor Tasha, a sleek, floor-length navy number that hugged in all the wrong places but made me look like I almost had a plan. I even managed to find some heels that didn't scream clearance rack. Matteo met me in the lobby. He looked like wealth had taken human form, tailored tucks, gold cufflinks, and a smile that could have launched 1,000 IPOs. You clean up nice, he said, offering his arm like we were some kind of couple from a Hallmark movie. I tried to play it cool. Thanks. I spent 20 minutes fighting with a curling iron and lost. We walked in together. The room was filled with people who looked like they vacationed in Monaco and laughed in subtle, expensive ways. CEOs. Politicians. Someone who might have been on Dancing with the Stars. I stuck close to Matteo, clutching my tiny purse like it was a life raft. This is my assistant, Maya López, he introduced me over and over. I'd smile, nod, throw in a harmless joke. People laughed, mostly at how refreshing it was that I didn't act like everyone else. And then came the glitch. I was backing away from the dessert table, plate stacked with macarons I couldn't pronounce, when my heel caught on something metal. A champagne bucket. It slid. I wobbled. And then, gravity. Right into Matteo. Full lap. Macarons flew. A glass of rose dumped itself across his jacket. The room gasped. I scrambled up, mortified. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. But Matteo stood calmly, took a napkin from a waiter, and dabbed his suit. Well, he said, eyes twinkling. That's one way to keep a party interesting. People laughed. Laughed. Not at me. With me. The woman from the city council clapped me on the back. That was the most exciting thing to happen all night. You're delightful. Later, Matteo pulled me aside. You know why I keep you around, Maya? Because I'm a walking disaster? He chuckled. Because you're real. You make people remember we're human. That night, something shifted between us. Subtle but there. When we walked out of the gala, he didn't offer me his arm this time. He offered me his jacket. I didn't give it back. And from that night on, the world of suits and strategy didn't feel quite so cold. Because someone like me, clumsy, broke, real, had somehow become essential to someone like him. But the higher you rise, the more people want to see you fall. And fall I did, just not in the way anyone expected. They say office gossip spreads faster than Wi-Fi, and honey, whoever said that has clearly worked in HR. The Monday after the gala, I walked into the office wearing a new spring in my step and Matteo's jacket over my arm. I'd meant to return it, but somehow it felt like a hug I wasn't ready to give back. People noticed. Oh, they noticed. Is that his jacket? Someone whispered near the copier. Did you see how he looked at her during the toast? Another murmured near the elevator. Petra, queen of ice and passive aggression, gave me a glance that could have frozen a pond. And then the real mess began. That afternoon, an anonymous email went out to the executive inbox list, including, you guessed it, me. The subject line read, 5 more minutes of fame? The body of the email was worse. A grainy phone pic from the gala, me practically in Matteo's lap, mid-fall, his hand catching my arm. The message below it said, "Seems like Mr. Sterling's new assistant is taking her duties very seriously. Sleeping in his bathtub wasn't enough." My stomach dropped. I couldn't breathe. Petra stood behind me and whispered, "Not unkindly for once, you should take this to Matteo." I did. He looked at the email, then at me, not angry, but furious in a different way. Protective. "This is garbage," he said, rising from his desk. "And I know exactly who sent it." I didn't ask who. I didn't want to know. I just sat there trying to keep my hands from shaking. "You don't deserve this, Maya," he added, softer now. "You've worked hard. You've made this place better." His voice cracked, just a little. "And I'm sorry you're paying the price for being close to me." That night he canceled all his meetings and walked me out personally. Like I was royalty. Or someone who mattered. But the damage was done. The whispers kept coming. Snide remarks from coworkers. Cold shoulders. Petra, surprisingly, stayed quiet, maybe even a little guilty. And then 2 days later, a story dropped on a gossip blog. Sterling's secret sweetheart? Inside the CEO's scandalous assistant affair. With my name. My sister Danny texted me in all caps. "Maya, what the heck is this?" I wanted to curl up and disappear. But I couldn't. Not when I'd worked so hard. Not when I had bills to pay and a little sister counting on me. So I marched into that office, chin up, even as my heart wobbled. And Matteo? He wasn't in his office. He was in the boardroom. Standing in front of every shareholder, department head, and PR shark. With a microphone. And me standing just outside the glass wall, watching like I was witnessing something I was never meant to see. "I'd like to address the rumors going around about my assistant, Maya López," he began. Voice clear. Confident. Cue 100 heads turning. And what he said next. It changed everything. There are moments you never forget. Where you were. What you were wearing. How your heart sounded like a freight train in your chest. This was one of those moments. I stood outside the glass-walled boardroom, frozen. Petra was beside me, for once not smirking, just wide-eyed, holding a notepad she clearly wasn't writing on anymore. Inside, Matteo Sterling looked like every movie CEO ever, sharp suit, steely stare, but somehow softer. Human. Like a man with something to lose. "I've heard the whispers," he said. His voice was calm, but you could feel the fire just underneath. The emails. The blog posts. The assumptions. And I won't pretend they didn't sting. But I will tell you this, Maya López is one of the smartest, bravest, most grounded people I've ever met. Silence. No one even coughed. He went on, "She started at our hotel, working shifts most of you wouldn't last an hour in. I didn't promote her out of pity or attraction. I promoted her because she's better at reading people than my entire PR team. She's honest when no one else dares to be. She's the reason our last campaign worked. She's the reason I haven't quit this place out of boredom." People shifted in their seats. Some looked embarrassed. Some looked surprised. A few interested in a new narrative. "And yes," he added as scanning the room until they landed on me, "I care about her." But that care didn't get her this job. It came after. It came because of who she is. Not because of who she's with. I felt Petra glance at me. I couldn't move. I couldn't blink. I just stood there, feeling like my bones were made of light in fear and something dangerously close to hope. I won't entertain another rumor, another anonymous tip, another attempt to tear her down. Not in my company. Not on my watch. Then he dropped the mic, not literally, but you know, in that rich, dignified way where he stepped back from the podium like, "We're done here." Applause started slow. Hesitant. Then stronger. Even Petra clapped. One of those tight, corporate claps, but still. Matteo walked straight out of the boardroom. Past executives, assistants, security. Right up to me. "You heard all that?" he asked. "Every word," I whispered. He nodded. "Good. I meant every one of them." And then he said it, the thing that made my knees wobble more than the heels I borrowed from Danny that morning. "Want to go grab a sandwich?" That was Matteo. Confess his heart in front of a boardroom, then ask if I want turkey on rye. So yeah, we went and got sandwiches. And I didn't stop smiling the entire time. But the truth? That speech didn't fix everything. There were still people who doubted me. People who side-eyed me in elevators and CC at Petra on every email like I might suddenly steal someone's job. But there was also something new. A spark. I started getting invited to strategy meetings. People asked for my input. One guy from marketing even called me Sterling's secret weapon. And then Matteo came to me with an idea. One that would change not just my life, but a lot of others too. You ever think about starting something? He asked over lunch one day. Something bigger? And oh honey, you better believe I said yes. Something bigger, he said. Matteo stirred his iced tea like he hadn't just dropped a life-changing opportunity in my lap between bites of tuna melt. We were sitting at this tiny cafe tucked between two buildings, the kind with wobbly tables and mismatched mugs, my kind of place. He wore a baseball cap low on his brow like he thought it would hide the fact that he was Matteo freaking Sterling. I leaned back, blinking. You want me to run a project? Not just run it, he said. Shape it. Build it. From the ground up. Based on your story. I choked on my lemonade. My story involves a bathtub and an unpaid gas bill. He smiled. Exactly. Real life. Real people. And that's how Project Vita was born. The idea was simple, beautiful, and kind of scary. A community initiative offering job training, housing help, and mentorship for people who'd fallen through the cracks, immigrants, single parents, ex-cons, people who'd been counted out. People like me. But launching it? Phew. That was another story. The first planning meeting felt like herding cats. Rich, overscheduled cats with clipboards and Bluetooth earpieces. They didn't take me seriously, not at first. One of them actually asked if I was here to take minutes. I just smiled and said, no, but I'll be making decisions, so you might want to take some yourself. Petra was there. Surprisingly supportive. Maybe that boardroom speech thawed her a little, or maybe she respected a woman who didn't flinch under pressure. Either way, she started handing me folders instead of dirty looks. We named it Project Vita Life in Spanish. I wanted people to feel like they could start fresh, like their story wasn't over just because it had a few messy chapters. We partnered with local community centers, secured a beautiful old brick building for our HQ, and started assembling a team. And you know who showed up for every meeting, sat through every budget review, and took every phone call I needed him to? Matteo. Not as a boss. As a partner. The press caught wind of it. And for once the headlines weren't scandalous. From housekeeper to hope giver, Maya López leads Project Vita with heart. Sterling Empire launches human-centered initiative with unexpected star at the helm. My inbox exploded. I was invited to speak at conferences. Danny cried when she saw me on a panel next to a U.S. senator. You were wearing your Payless flats and telling rich people how to run things, she sobbed. You're my hero. It was surreal. Beautiful. But not everyone was happy. Some people, especially within the company, still saw me as the girl who got lucky with a bathtub nap. And now with Matteo and I working this closely, the whispers started again. They came for me, not publicly, not this time, but in snide remarks and conveniently lost emails, misfiled reports, quiet little ways of saying, you don't belong here. And then came the funding review. The big one. A board vote that would decide if Project Vita got permanent annual backing or got axed entirely. And guess who led the charge against us? Someone I never saw coming. There's something about boardrooms, the air's always too cold, and everyone speaks in that clipped, polite tone like they're trying not to spill hot coffee on a landmine. The vote was scheduled for a Thursday. I remember because I barely slept the night before. Danny texted me a gif of a raccoon in a suit with the caption, "You got this, boss," and I nearly cried into my oatmeal. This wasn't just about funding. It was about legitimacy. About proving that Project Vita wasn't some feel-good PR stunt, that it had roots and purpose and impact. That I wasn't just a fluke in heels and borrowed confidence. I wore my power blazer. The one I found secondhand and had tailored to fit. It made me feel like I could argue with the Pope and maybe win. Matteo was calm as always, but I knew him by now. The twitch in his jaw? That meant tension. That meant he was preparing for a fight. The board gathered. 12 members. All important. All powerful. And sitting right at the end, legs crossed and lips pursed, was her. Clarissa James. Senior Vice President of Development. Fancy degrees. Killer cheekbones. And a grudge against anything she didn't invent herself. She leaned back in her chair, tapping a pen. Project Vita is charming, she said, oozing condescension. Truly. But is it sustainable? Is it scalable? Or is it just a vanity project led by someone with an emotional backstory and little executive experience? My stomach sank. I opened my mouth to respond, but Matteo beat me to it. Maya has more hands-on leadership experience than half the people in this room. She's navigated real crises. She's earned the trust of the community. And frankly, if we want to be a company that leads into the future, she's the future. Clarissa raised an eyebrow. You're personally involved, Matteo. Your judgment's clouded. And that's when I stood up. My voice didn't shake. My knees? That's another story. Clarissa, I respect your concerns, I said. But Project Vita isn't about me. It's about the people we're helping. We've already placed 42 individuals into jobs. We've helped 18 families secure housing. We've launched 3 mentorship programs, and we've done it in 6 months with half the budget of any traditional initiative. I handed out the reports I stayed up all night preparing. Data, testimonials, photos. A woman named Janelle, a single mom I'd worked with, had handwritten a note for the board. Before Project Vita, I was sleeping in my car with my son. Now I've got a job, a place to live, and a future. If you take this away, you're not just cutting a program. You're cutting off hope. There was silence. Then a voice piped up from the end of the table. I vote yes. Another followed. Yes. One by one, hands raised. Until only Clarissa was left. She glanced around. Realized she was the odd one out. With a sigh sharp enough to slice diamonds, she muttered, fine. Yes. It passed. We'd done it. After the meeting, Matteo turned to me, eyes full of that soft light I was starting to fall in love with. You didn't need me in there, he said. You did that yourself. But I smiled and said, yeah, but I still liked knowing you were beside me. And I did. I really did. That night, we celebrated at a tiny rooftop restaurant. It was just the two of us, under string lights and a sky that felt like it belonged in a movie. He gave me a little box just out of nowhere. Inside? A key. To the Project Vita building, he said. You're officially its director now. I had the door changed. Only you have this key. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again. I thought you were proposing for a second. He looked at me. That quiet, intense look that made my breath catch. Not yet, he said. But soon. Spring came early that year, the kind of soft, golden spring where the air smells like promises and wildflowers push up through every crack in the sidewalk. Project Vita opened its second center. Danny passed her nursing boards with flying colors, thank you very much. Life wasn't perfect, there were still bills, bad days, and the occasional snarky whisper, but it was ours. Built, not borrowed. And then came the day. It started simple. Matteo asked me to meet him at the Sterling Grand. Suite 1801. I laughed when I got the text. The bathtub suite. Of course. When I arrived, the door was ajar. A trail of candles led me inside. Not a lot, just enough to flicker and dance against the marble. The bathtub was filled with rose petals. My heart practically leapt into my throat. And there he was. Matteo, standing by the window in a dark blue suit. No tie, sleeves rolled to his forearms like he was about to fix a broken swing or start a revolution. He smiled when he saw me. That real smile. The one he didn't waste on boardrooms or interviews. The one he saved just for me. I thought it was fitting, he said, nodding toward the tub. Since this is where it all started. I laughed, wiping a stray tear. You mean where I drooled on a $10,000 pillow and almost lost my job before I had it? He crossed the room, took my hands in his. His palms were warm. Solid. No, Maya. Where I found the woman who changed my life. And then he dropped to one knee. My hands flew to my mouth. I swear the room tilted. He pulled out a ring, simple, stunning, a delicate diamond nestled into a platinum band. Tiny letters engraved inside caught the light. I squinted through my tears. It said, 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes, Matteo said, his voice breaking just a little, was all it took for you to walk into my life. 5 more minutes gave me everything I didn't know I needed. So Maya López, will you give me 5 more minutes and a lifetime after that as my wife? I couldn't even speak. I just nodded furiously, laughing and crying at the same time. I dropped to my knees too because standing felt way too far away from him. Yes, I whispered against his chest. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He kissed me, soft at first, then grinning against my mouth like we were getting away with something incredible. We didn't throw some massive, glittering wedding. No, that wasn't us. We got married 2 months later, barefoot in a garden behind Project Vita's new building. Danny was my maid of honor, crying harder than I was. Matteo's best friend, Marcus, made terrible jokes during the vows. Kids from the center threw wildflowers instead of rice. And when Matteo slid that ring onto my finger, he whispered in my ear, you'll never have to ask for 5 more minutes again. The crowd cheered. The sky turned a ridiculous, perfect shade of blue. And I, Maya López, former housekeeper, bathtub napper, accidental executive, stepped into a new chapter. A messy, beautiful, chaotic, ours kind of life. Because sometimes all it takes to change everything is just 5 more minutes. The end.